Hello folks, it is time for some more hobby nightmares. Somebody asked me the other day why all these videos are on minimal difficulty, you know. Number one, I'm not very good at Space Marine. We're not very good at fighting Tyranids anyway. So I already play it on normal, and nothing higher than that. But number two, I like to walk around the level and look at things. It's hard to do that on higher difficulties. So there you go, now you know. We've got one hobby nightmare today. It is a heavy one, so be forewarned before we go in. But it's something that I wanted to read out because it came to me over the weekend, and I saved it until today. So I wanted to give it its own video, its own airtime, so we can breathe and we can get the story out there. All right. So let's jump in to Luke's hobby nightmare. Now, we get loads of comments on this channel. Most of them are positive. I will say, I don't police the comment section on my videos, like, at all. But this is one where I will be looking out to see if there's anybody being a little cretin. Because, this is not one I'm going to be tolerating nonsense on, I don't think. We generally don't get it on this channel. And, I often think that if you're doing negative YouTube comments, there's nothing going on in your life because you've taken the time to write that comment, and all it does is give me points in the algorithm. So cheers. because YouTube doesn't know between good and bad comments. It just sees a comment, right? So feel free, but not today. This one's going to be one that's going to be hitting close to home for some people. So let's go into Luke's story and read about his time in the hobby, shall we? And he says, "Hey North, I had to write this in and get it to you because it's been eating at me recently. You see, this week marks the 3rd anniversary of a dear friend of mine passing away by his own means. So, it's going to be one of those hobby nightmares, if you catch my drift. Give all the warnings, yada yada yada." Okay, thank you. "You called it the ultimate form of despair the other day, and that's about right, yeah. Anyway, his name was Mark. He and I went way back. We met in secondary school as kids and entered the hobby together, heading to our local games workshop to be taken under the wings of the amazing red shirts there and their manager, Ian. A brilliant group of lads who all the parents seemed to love. It was such a cool and nurturing environment where this dyslexic kid, me, learned how to calculate maths problems by building my lists for gaming and learning the myriad rules of chance and fractions that can help you make better decisions in games of 40k back then. Ian would even have one of the staffers, James, sit with me and go over my maths homework to double check I was getting the things right, and if I did, I'd get to pick out a free pot of paint or get that month's White Dwarf for free. It was that kind of store, a beautiful place lost in time." Dude, that's a hobby store right there, right? That's not a Games Workshop store, that's a hobby store. They can be both, of course, but like back in the day, when people don't seem to realise how different Games Workshop is these days, this is the kind of store I like to point to and go, that's how it used to be. Is that how it is in your store? I doubt it, right? I doubt it. Or you're one of the freakish stores that still like that. They are out there, but they are very few and far between. Alright, let's move on. "That store has now moved somewhere else in the city, and after Mark passed away, I walked in to try and touch those memories and feelings again, only to find it was a sterile Warhammer branded store that had the cold precision of an Apple store. It was empty and quiet, even on a Friday afternoon heading into the evening. The staff didn't really know much about the hobby and seemed completely disinterested in my story, instead trying to upsell me the newest shiny starter box with Primaris Marines in it. I just left. Dude, that's... I know it's a heavy subject today, but that's just depressing. That is a downfall and a half. Something similar happened in my city as well. I've not been in our Warhammer store for a long time, right? For quite a while. So I don't know what's going on there right now. Last time I was in there, they were perfectly lovely people last time I was in there. But no games can be played in there. It's always generally empty whenever I walk past. If I've gotten the train, because our Games Workshop's in the train station, it's always generally empty with a manager standing there looking lonely. But the Games Workshop in my city was on Lord Street back in the day. And it was jammed. Like, every single day. It was full of painters and gamers and people laughing and joking and reading books together. And, you know, there was a Blood Bowl league upstairs. It was so good, man. And in a similar way, the staff were also really good with you. You know, they would actually teach you things and take you under their wing and show you what's what around the hobby and stuff. And, yeah, they were your heroes, dude. Long gone are the days, eh? Anyway. As we went through life, Mark and I, we went to different universities and kind of lost touch for a bit, as will often happen with friends. After university, though, we were both trying to make our way in the world of adults, and actually got back into contact through a mutual friend and met up for a drink. It was like no time had shifted at all. We were right back to discussing Orcs and Black Templars, the games we used to have. The Hell's Reach book, which Mark insisted should have more Orcs in it. He recommended the Wars of the Beast series if I wanted to see a pointless war with Orcs at their best in it, which I did later, and I loved it. There was something else though. Mark was trying to find his way in life after university and to find a job, but he was really struggling. He was never any good with authority. He'd act out a lot when placed in situations like that. He told me he always felt like a bit of an alien in situations when surrounded by normal people, a fraud pretending to be one of them. He'd be miserable and eventually his work ethic and rate would drop and he'd be fired. He was very frank about it. Dude, like, I feel that. And I think a lot of people listening to this Hobby Nightmare will feel that, right? Have you ever sat back in a social situation and looked, especially if you're at work, and everyone's just having a laugh and a giggle and about something going on in work, and I'm looking around, and you kind of just don't feel it, you know? You're like, is it me? Am I weird? Am I the outcast? Like, am I the abnormal one? Like, this is where we are now. You know, I get that a lot. I used to when I worked in offices. Last time I felt this way was probably Games Workshop, or maybe with one or two friends, like who were friends of friends. Like, they weren't really my friends; they were just, you know, acquaintances. And I was just like, yeah, I don't fit in here, right? These aren't my people, right? Once or twice that happened with Games Workshop when I'm sitting there looking around the room, going, I know I'm a weirdo, and I like to laugh at stupid things, and you know, I like to just, you know, be happy and things, but I'm looking around the room and I'm like, yeah, I don't think you guys are me, you know? I don't think you're me at all. And there was a few other people I could notice in that room who were also looking around going, wow, these are all, when's the Kool-Aid get here? When can we drink that? Because I want to be a part of the sheep. I don't want to be like the black sheep standing out, you know what I mean? It doesn't feel nice. So I get what you mean. Mark was an amazing model painter and illustrator. He had so much natural artistic talent. I advised him to go back to college and get a certification in art so he could start his own business, or even to sell his services to earn a bit of cash on the side. He nodded along, but I could see this was a man battered by life. He had lost jobs, relationships, and had fallen headfirst into that post-university black hole that looms when you finish something that has defined your life and social circles for 3 to 4 years, and you think, what the fuck do I do now? Dude, again, I feel that. After university, lads, be very careful. University is a good time in your life, but there will come a time when it ends, and you need a plan. You need a plan, right? I think Luke goes on to say that as well. I think he does next, but like you definitely need a plan. There is a massive gaping, as he terms it, black hole on the other side of your studies, and if you don't have something in place, that's where you're going to go. You pass the event horizon, and you're going into the black hole. Now, unlike real black holes, you can come out of this one, right? Like I did, and eventually, right? It took me 10 years, dude. 10 years after university was me figuring out what the hell I wanted to do in my life. Right? In that time, I worked for Games Workshop. I had many different jobs in bars and restaurants and things. You know, in hospitality, ran a bar or two. You know, eventually decided to become a teacher. Didn't like public school teaching. Ended up in private teaching, and now here I am. Right, that took 10 years of my life. Throw into that a a long-term relationship that didn't work out, where I was very nearly going down the aisle and things, right? In a different part of the world. That's a lot. And that's me trying to find myself in 10 years. Only now have I recently started to become a self-actualized person. If you don't know what that means, it means you're basically... It sounds like a really girly thing, but imagine you're like a flower that's trying to bud, right? You know? The self-actualized person is a fully budded flower, right? It's there, and it's enjoying the prime of its life. Things are going well, right? I'm not there yet, but I've now started the journey to getting there. I can see the finish line of, okay, that's where I'm going to be, and I'm going to be okay, right? It's a really good feeling. But it took me a decade, man. 10 years of struggle. And some of those years were me not wanting to be here anymore. I'm going to be honest. There were several times in those years where I was very close. The only thing that kept me here was that I'm too much of a coward to actually hurt myself. Do you know what I mean? I think I've mentioned it before. There have been a few times where if you'd have given me just a flick of a switch, and if you flick that switch, then you just disappear, and nobody ever knew you existed, so no one's going to be hurt, then I would have flicked it. At least once or twice in those 10 years. I would have done it. The despair was that bad, you know? It was not good. By the way, as I'm reading this, I can smell bacon. Right? My window is open in my office. I can smell bacon. I think there's someone in the back garden. Someone's back garden. And they're cooking bacon. Let me have a look. I'm going to snoop. This is North Live snooping. Who's cooking bacon? I'm going to end up in somebody's back garden, aren't I? This is if you want to lure me somewhere, yeah, you want to lure me somewhere, just cook bacon and just waft it into the breeze, and a wild north may turn up in your back garden. Anyway, I think that not enough students take this into account during their studies. They are so focused on them, but ending university without a plan can send a man down some dark paths, if they certainly can. I could see in Mark, he was shattered. He smiled and was happy when talking about anything but normal life. It seemed to just cause him to retreat into himself when we did so. He didn't act like a petulant child, nothing like that, and he hid it well. He would always smile and be polite. He'd encourage you when you had an idea about something in life, and always made you feel as if you were the only person in the room when speaking to you. Well, seems like a decent bloke, all in all. He had boundless curiosity, and to be honest, he was amazing for my own mental well-being. Having somebody there who always wanted to know what I was up to and what was happening in my life, and I'd be the same for him. He'd speak to me about his exploits in role-playing, and how he was slowly ebbing away from it as people were using it as an excuse to pretend to be actors and stir up drama, when all he wanted to do was experience a great story, kill some orcs and goblins, and loot some gold. Yeah, we've all been there, mate, we've all been there. I can't help but feeling, though, that this reciprocal relationship was a bit one-sided, as I would always have things to tell Mark, things that I've been doing in life, things that were exciting me, and when I asked him about things that he was doing, he very rarely had anything to say, aside from any hobby project he was working on. So I kind of felt bad. We'd have long conversations about life, and would get together on Saturdays to play 40k, Orcs versus Black Templars, just like the old days, and I'd always take a hell of a beating. The games were very close though, always good-natured, and it was through 40k that I started to notice something about our relationship. Mark had thrown himself into getting an art scholarship that he was in the last stages of in terms of the application process. He was sure he was going to get it and it was going to define his life. He banked everything on it. Finances, everything. He was told by his tutors, who were training him for it, that it was a done deal, by the university that it was a done deal. Then, the funding fell through at the 11th hour, and the scholarship was cancelled completely. That's life in the arts, man. Right? You're not in the sciences. Life in the arts can be that. I feel that. 3 years of work wasted. Mark is suddenly penniless and back on benefits, living with his ailing mother in a really, really shitty part of the UK with a hard, miserable winter on the way. I could see on our last few 40k games that Mark had lost the spark. It was like it was gone from behind his eyes. Dude. So in my life, I've had one occasion when it was similar to this. I'm not going to tell you where I was when I was living, but it wasn't a great place. It was in the Midlands somewhere. It wasn't a great place, and there was one afternoon where I went for a walk. I think I went to the store for something. Went to the shop for something. I left my flat, and everybody else is at work. There's something that's really lonely, incredibly lonely about being unemployed, right? When everybody else is at work. And I walked to the store, it was grey and it was dark. It was during the day, but it was almost like it was night time. It was grey and dark and miserable, right? There was mist. It was like Silent Hill, man. It was weird. And I walked to the store, and there was these like shantytown places around, like prefab units that were just full of poverty and misery. And I got to the store, and I just didn't buy anything because I didn't really have the money for anything, and I just walked home. That's probably one of the darkest hours, single hours of my life. Like, I'm telling you now, that was bad. That was bad. And I do look back on that now, and I'm thinking, how the fuck did I get from that to like crawl my way out of there? This is why I say in Hobby Nightmares, man, when I say I've been there, I've done it, and you can get out of it, this is why I say it. This is why. Because I've been there. Right? Anyway. He'd laugh and joke, but it was like he was from the uncanny valley. The smiles never reached his eyes. I tried to get to him, to bring him out of his shell, and to come up with something else he could do with his life. I also felt bad. My life, as I mentioned before, had pretty much taken off by this point. I had a wonderful partner, my own house, a decent job. I had things to keep me going and to throw myself into. I looked at Mark and saw that he was lost, a man without a purpose, and that is a very, very dangerous thing, especially to himself. Beyond getting him out of the house, encouraging him to find something else, and sending him applications to other artistic institutions, and to tell him to keep going, what else could I do? It was like he was heading to a waterfall edge, and the only way I could be with him was to go over that edge with him, which is not something I could do. Yeah, definitely feeling that, yeah. Then came one Saturday, and the weekly 40k game. Mark was in fine form. He was laughing and joking, having a really good time, and he just seemed like he'd cracked the code finally. I asked him after the game about what had been going on, which he won handily by swamping me with his war and having Gazgul rip the head off of Grimaldus. I asked him what had changed. Did he get something else job-wise? Is he on the road to a new scholarship? He told me that he didn't have anything going on, and that he had just accepted that he had to roll with the punches, be like water, or something along those lines. After that, we talked over a beer, and he asked me to hold on to his army for him, as he was going to rearrange some stuff in his room, and didn't want to break them. I told him sure, and we called it a night soon after that. I never saw Mark again. He jumped from a bridge that evening on the way home, and never got back to his mum. Obviously, I was the last port of call, so I was involved in the search and giving evidence when we eventually found him. I can't help but think, even though his mum told me she didn't blame me, that there was some part of her that did, and I don't blame her, but this really isn't about me. I didn't see the ultimate despair in Mark. I couldn't get to the root of it or figure it out in time. I may have been the last person he spoke to before making that decision. I can't help but think I didn't do enough to pull him back from the precipice. Something was said in your comment section a little while ago, that all people who survive self-deletion attempts by jumping regret it the second they stepped off the ledge and are relieved to have survived if they did. That one haunts me to this day. I can't shake the feeling that Mark could have been saved if I had just done more to pull him out of his hole. His mum is old and doesn't really get mental health, you know? But I do. It's what brought me to your channel, and your channel is what has given me the strength to send this in. My life continues to go well, but I do have this shadow following after me, never leaving me alone. I would ask for advice, but maybe it will get better one day on its own. I hope so, but probably not. Thanks for all you do, North. Luke. Alright. I'm going to be honest with you here. There's a few things I need to say here. Number one is, you really, really did all you could here, my friend. Right? Do you know why he was being so happy on that last 40k game? He'd made the decision. This isn't... He didn't... You're acting like he walked away from meeting you and all of a sudden just decided to do that on the way home because, you know, you weren't giving him enough attention or you didn't say the right thing, right? That's not true. He'd made the decision already, in my mind. If he's saying that to you, please look after my stuff, right? That's the thing, right? That's the thing. If he's all of a sudden makes a complete rebound... Have you seen how there's this phenomena of people who have terminal illnesses? They all of a sudden, the last few days of their life, they rebound completely and they're fine. And they even put on some weight, right? They're doing really well. And it almost gives the family false hope. And then all of a sudden, within a couple of hours, they're dead, right? That is it is something that's not explained by modern science. A lot of doctors seem to think it's to do with, you know, the last rallying call of the body trying to give it one last go to try and survive, but also to give you time to put your affairs in order, right? To give you a lot of energy and make you do things to make sure that when you're leaving, you're doing it in the best way possible. You know, it could be a holdover from evolution, right? The body knows it's about to die, so burst that last bit of energy to make sure that the saber-toothed tiger that's trying to get into the cave is dead before you die, right? That kind of a thing. We don't know, but there are many different theories. I often think people who have made the decision, because they're so miserable and so unhappy, they've made the decision to end their own lives, right? When they've come to that decision and they know they're going to do it, that's their version of the last rallying thing, right? They're trying to give everybody a last good memory of them. And they also are extremely selfless in that they try to give away their things. They try to make other people's lives better before they go, because they know they're going to be very sad when they're gone, but they think they're doing everybody a favour by doing so, which isn't true, but that's what they think, right? My point here is that you shouldn't take any blame for this. You did more, from what you've told me, you did more than 99.9% of friends could have done, right? Literally. And the only other 0.01% of friends that could have done more are the guys who have, like, massive companies and could have given this guy a really well-paying job and just hauled him out of the hole by their own bootstraps, you know what I mean? But most of us, 99.9% of us, aren't in that situation, right? You did all you could with what you had. You know? You went back for this guy. I'm insanely proud of you for doing so. Well done. You went back for this guy. You know, he didn't want to be saved, man. That's just the long and the short of it. He'd had enough. He didn't want to be saved. What I will say is, let's hone in on that thing you said. Like, most people who make that decision immediately regret it. That's true. It's the one decision you can never, ever take back. You can take back anything in life, eventually, right? This is the one decision that you make that you can never take it back. It's done, right? That's you. You're finished. It's done. You know? It's the one decision why I'm really glad I didn't do it when I had the wherewithal and the opportunity, you know? Very, very, very glad I didn't, because I wouldn't be where I am now. Even on the bad days. Even on the bad days that I have, I still have a good life, right? I still smell the roses. You know, try never make that decision. It's because you're depriving yourself of all of the opportunities to get out on the other side. Right? It's the ultimate form of despair, as we've mentioned before. It's the ultimate form of giving up and saying, I can't do this anymore. And you know what? You're not an evil person for deciding to do that. I'm not one of those people who says, oh, you know, the gift of life and all that. Sometimes, as someone who's been on the cusp of it, I can see the edge. I can see the precipice. I can see why oblivion would be so tempting to people who just are in such pain that they can't do it anymore, right? But at the same time, I would implore you to seek every single opportunity to avoid it. You know? Every single opportunity, because the amount of people I speak to who either failed because they survived their attempt, or literally were talked down at the very last moment. The amount of people I've spoken to who said, thank God I did that. And do you know what most of them say? My life didn't magically turn around after I failed my self-deletion attempt. They all say that. It was the same. I was still suffering. But day by day, inch by inch, I clawed my way out of it. Because I knew I'd been at rock bottom now. I'd been at rock bottom. You know? To most people, rock bottom is making this serious contemplation of doing away with yourself. Right? That was mine, anyway. That was my rock bottom. And a lot of other people's rock bottoms too. Your rock bottom is, you know what? When you realise people's lives might be easier if I wasn't here. Or when you think you realise that, anyway. It's not true, but when you think you realise that, that's rock bottom. To me, right? That's rock bottom. But just by living, just by getting up in the morning, just by being around, you naturally will start to claw your way out of it. It may be very slow. It may take years. It may take 10 fucking years, in my case, right? To get there. To get to a point when you're like, okay, I'm here now, right? I'm doing okay. But you will get there, eventually. Eventually. You will get there. Right? The only time you'll never get there is if you make this decision. That's it. Because you can't take it back and it's done. You're out the game. You know? But Luke, mate, you've got nothing to feel guilty about. The last thing I want to say to you is that you say, will this ever go away? No. Unfortunately, it won't. Because you were very close to Mark, and you were the last person to see him, and all that stuff. It's time to accept that this may haunt you for the rest of your life. Fair enough. But what I want you to do right now is look at that guilt, look at the responsibility you feel you have towards him, acknowledge it, and let it go. That's what you should be doing right now. Acknowledge it's there, and let it go. Alright? That's what you should be doing. Because this was not your fault. He'd made that decision long before turning up to game with you that week. I'm telling you now. Right? It was a done deal. Barring throwing him into a locked van or room, you weren't going to stop him. You know? This is a guy who's made peace with it. This is the danger. But when somebody passes into acceptance and starts being happy again and giving their things away, if they've been really depressed and then all of a sudden they're not, and they start giving their things away, they start wanting to do nice things for you out of nowhere that seem really out of place, like really, really nice things for you, do an intervention. That's the time. That's Danger Will Robinson. That we are. The ram has touched the wall. They have made that decision to leave the world behind. So you need to get in there and make sure that that's not what they do. Right? Remind them. You need to remind them of their pain. Don't let them be that happy of, oh, I've accepted I'm going to do this. Don't let them do that. Remind them, no, mate, life's a struggle, and we're going to do it together. Don't you dare think of doing that. Don't you dare. Right? Always go back for your bros, just like Luke did. And do you know what Luke did that's fucking heroic here? He did it. He went back for his bro, and he got absolutely burned for it. Now he's going to have to live with this for the rest of his life. Right? But I bet you Luke would do it all over again. For the next friend that Luke has. I bet you he'll do it all over again. If it happens. Right? Hopefully it won't. It's very rare that it does. But, you know. Life is strange. You know, we all need a guy like Luke in our lives. So, and I can give you no more higher compliment than that, mate. Alright? So, it's not your responsibility. It wasn't your decision. He made that decision. He was done with life. He'd had enough, right? You need to get on with yours. Have your family. Acknowledge that, you know, these things happened. And that, you know, it's really, really sucks. But beyond that, dude, live your life. Alright? Only take responsibility in life for things that are actually your fault. And this was not one of them. You did a manly, heroic job of saving this guy from oblivion. And you know, he was years behind schedule. Do you know what I mean? In my opinion, from what you told me. This guy was on the precipice for a long time and you were keeping him from it. You know? Sometimes dams break. It's not your fault, man. Alright? Alright. I love you a long time. I will speak to you tomorrow, where we are going to be doing a video. What day is it today? It is Tuesday when I'm recording this. This is Wednesday's video. So tomorrow we're recording Thursday's video, which is a chat with Mordy and Glory, where we're going to be discussing Adepticon, Armageddon, and the Steel Legion. So I will see you then. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll speak to you soon. Have a good one. Bye now.